different brands of glass etching cream for 4 different glasses that I have right here. We're going to try them all out. We're going to see which ones actually work, which ones suck, and walk away with some really cool glasses, hopefully at the end. So my name is Brittany Bly. I'm the founder of PopShopAmerica.com. Let's get started. All right, so I'm going to use one cream on each glass individually so we can actually compare them, see which ones we like, see which glass etching cream is easy to work with. So let's open these up and read the directions. So right here I've got this folk art brand. This is just from a regular craft supply store. It doesn't look like there's anything weird about it, so I'm going to open this up and we'll get into the instructions a little bit more in depth in just a minute. So this one comes in a 2.98 ounce bottle. This one right here is 2.8 ounces. This is Armour Etch. This is going to be for our glass right here. So I'm basically just going to go down the line, use one each. This one is a little bit bigger, but I bet this comes in a smaller size. This is just the only size I could really find online. And let's check out this big boy. Easy etch. Let's see if this is easy. Low fumes. That makes me nervous. All right, here we go. So the first thing I'm going to want to do with any glass etching project is I want to add some kind of stencil or block out some kind of area where I'm going to apply the glass etching cream. So I've got some sticker stencils right here. For this type of glass, I want to do something small. Anytime you're working on a glass, there's going to be a curvature to it. So it's always a little quirky when you're applying the stencils. So just make sure that you don't leave any air bubbles, that it's perfectly sealed. We also want to make sure that it's perfectly up and down. Any little angle or making it slightly off kilter is really going to show on the finished piece. So always run your hand over where the stencil is, make sure that it's firmly down. There's no air bubbles, and I'm going to pick it up and look at it head on just to double check that. So really spend your time with this because like even right here, I can see just some little air bubbles from the front that I never would have noticed like this. And you really want to work to get those out. Like prepping your supplies is half of the battle with a project like this. So make sure that everything is perfect before you apply the glass etching cream. So let's keep going down the line, adding some stencils. We're going to prep each glass for each individual cream. Now this one's really weird because check it out how this little opening is kind of asymmetrical inside of the stencil. So that makes it really confusing when you're applying it. So let's just, yeah, this one we need to fix. Now, of course, stickers are best for a project like this. What I wouldn't want to use is just a regular stencil, which will work, but on a curved glass, it's not quite as easy. And these are a very dramatic, it's a very severe curve, so that's going to make it even harder. So sticker stencils are really where it's at for something like this. Last one. This one's cute. Little moon and stars. We have all of our sticker stencils applied to our glasses. So let's just talk about how we're going to apply a glass etching cream and just make sure that we feel really comfortable with that. So all of these different products are going to be a cream. We're going to take a popsicle stick. We're going to spread just a tiny amount inside of all of these stickers. We want to make sure that nothing outside of the sticker ends up with any glass etching cream. And what it's going to do is these creams are going to eat at the surface of the glass. They're going to make the glass look frosty so that when we remove the glass etching cream, then remove the stencil, we have that beautiful frosty image remaining. So I'm going to keep moving from one side to the other. The first one I've got right here is a folk art brand, just from the regular craft supply store. So not really any instructions on the bottle. So when you're working with this one, make sure you keep your packaging. Instructions are clean the surface with soap and water, tape off areas not intended to be etched. Let etching cream remain on the surface for 15 minutes. Okay, so that's longer than some of these other ones. 15 minutes. Okay, so let's go ahead and open this up. And I heard this before trying it, that this stuff is like brown, which the rest of them are gonna be white, I'm pretty sure. So this is kind of strange. It's really thick and chunky. So it seems a little strange that anyone would apply this with a brush. It seems to lend itself better to using a popsicle stick. And now all I'm doing is just dabbing it onto the area inside of the stencil, applying a very thin layer. And it's actually really nice. So like I said, all of these glass etching creams for the most part are white. This one is brown, and I can already say just from it being brown, it's a little bit easier to see where it's touching the surface of the glass. It kind of already makes it a slightly better product. Now, we'll see how the etching turns out, right? That's the most important part. But I can say it being brown, I can see it a lot better. I know what I haven't covered in cream, what I have. So that is a huge advantage to this folk art brand. So I've got it completely on here. And let's just make sure we set a timer for 15 minutes because that's how long it says just to sit on here. Now there's that one. I'm going to take my popsicle stick and just set it to the side on something that we can throw away, something carefully, and we'll move on. All right, so before I start on my second glass etching cream, let's make sure we put the lid on this bad boy. We don't need an accident. We don't need any drama. We've got another fresh popsicle stick handy, and I'm moving on to my second one, which is Armour Etch. Now, this is the brand that we have been carrying at Pop Shop, but I can say I absolutely hate this company customer service-wise. They're insane and terrible. So I don't want to carry this brand anymore. So that's a big part of why I'm trying out this project is I want to see some other brands, how they function to figure out what we are going to carry at Pop Shop America. So this one is...
Keep it a little lower.
This glass etching cream is actually slightly more liquid than the folk art. It's thick and white, and I can still see it really well. But it definitely has a lot more movement, which means that this brand I'm going to have to be a lot more careful with than the folk art brand. So just as far as applying it to the surface, I like this one a lot more, the folk art. The Armour Etch, I like it a lot less. Now, again, this is the one that I've always used. I've used this a million times. I've used it for years. So I can say that I like the results. We'll see how it compares in this panel. But as far as applying it, it kind of is terrible. This one we're going to leave on for 10 minutes. I believe the instructions say 5 minutes. Let's read them. And I believe that the instructions are wrong. Okay, so it doesn't even have the instructions on the bottle, and this is literally how it comes. So I guess you would have to look this up online if you were going to work with this, because this is exactly how we sell it from our website, and there's no information at all. So I'm pretty sure that the instructions tell you to leave it on for 5 minutes. Those are wrong. Any of these, now this is like an acid that eats at the surface of the glass. When we open these fresh, all of these are brand new fresh bottles. It's going to be at maximum potency. But once you open this up and over weeks or over a month, it really loses that potency. But there's another reason that I leave this on for 10 minutes that I don't think anybody would know about unless they work with these supplies a lot, which is that because we're applying like a cream or kind of a liquid to a solid surface, it's actually going to end up with a lot of air bubbles mixed in there. So when those air bubbles are sitting in between the glass and the glass etching cream, you're not going to get a solid frosty look. It's going to be missing little pieces. It's going to look messy and it's just not going to come out right. So with this one, because we're leaving this on for 15 minutes, and with this one, because we're leaving it on for 10 minutes, at the 5-minute mark, I'm going to take my popsicle stick and I'm going to move all of that glass etching cream around. And that's just going to ensure that even if there were air bubbles, that we've moved those air bubbles, that they've had time to settle, so that our entire glass is going to get an even, perfect frost look. This one, I'm going to do that same thing at about 7.5 minutes, right? So like right through the halfway point, we're going to do it on every single one. So let's move on to Etchall. This one has the instructions right on the bottle. I have never used this brand, so I'm grateful that it has the instructions here. Clean glass surface to be etched. All of these say that before you get started. Cover your surface with a stencil or some kind of design. Use Etchall squeegee to rub down stencil edges and remove air bubbles. So that's very clever, and I'm glad that they tell you to do that. No one else has mentioned that really you want your stencil to be perfectly adhered before you apply the cream. Let cream sit for 15 minutes. So that's interesting. So we've got 15 minutes. This is supposed to be 5, but we're doing 10. This one is 15 minutes as well. Use a heavy coat of Etchall, and that's it. So let's go ahead and open it up. All of these have a child-proof safety cap. All of the caps are very similar. Ooh, and then this one has this additional seal in here, so it looks like I'm going to need to grab some scissors. Cut this open. So I've got this box cutter to be able to cut this open. I can already say from the packaging, Etchall is the best. It's not just that Etchall is the best as far as packaging of folk art, Armour Etch, and Etchall. Etchall has the best instructions as well. So this is a time that I'm definitely going to bust out some gloves. Don't touch the glass etching cream. This glass etching cream, now if you remember, I said that this is basically like an acid that eats away the surface of the glass. This is not something we want to touch. This is why all of the instructions say to put on gloves. So now I'm finally going to follow my own instructions. So I don't love that I have to put on gloves to get through this step. And I don't know why it like immediately opened up, you know, to where it like bubbled out like this. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm just taking that plastic wrap that it came in, and I'm going to immediately throw this away, and I'm going to clean that surface. So that's a little weird. Maybe I shook it up before I used it. So now I have like a safer area. I'm not going to get this all over my gloves, which is a little bit better. Wow, this is still really hard to get open. Wow. They mean business with this guy. So it looks like, I mean, I'm going to have to cut this like half open to get in there. So this is pretty messy. I actually think I hate this. I mean, I like how safe they are. Like, this is great. Like, they're very smart. You know, this is very child-proof. But, I mean, look, like, I'm, like, covered in this stuff. Like, you don't want to get this anywhere. You don't, this is going to spill. Like, the second that this tears off, it's going to fling little particles everywhere. So this is, I don't know. So, see, now I've got glass etching cream everywhere. So I actually need to wash this off thoroughly and probably put this glove away before I begin to etch this glass. Wow, well, that was a lot of drama. So there were things I loved about that and things that I hated. And let's take a look at this cream. It looks exactly the same as the Armour Etch. It's that same milky white. It has pretty much the same texture. The only difference is how long we leave it on the surface of the glass. That's literally the only difference that I can find. I mean, even the bottle is like almost exactly the same. I almost wonder, like, are these two brands, do they feel like they're in direct competition with each other? is like one of the brands, is it like a company member that left the company and started their own? I might look into that later just for fun because these are remarkably similar products. And just like the Armour Etch, I'm already finding that it's just slightly more liquidy than what I would like. So I'm kind of worried about it dripping. I would just make sure that your layer is really thin because we are running that risk of dripping. And I've got the Etchall on this glass right here. I'm going to take my popsicle stick and set it to the side. Now what's really great is that I managed to time these pretty decently to where it's been about 7 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and mix this first one again just to make sure there's not any air bubbles so we can really make sure that we are seeing the glass etching cream in its full glory. So all I'm doing is I'm just moving it around. Halfway through our curing of the glass etching cream, we just move it around just to make sure we didn't miss any spots. And in a few minutes, we'll do the same thing to this one. In about 7 minutes, we'll move around the glass etching cream on this one. So now we are on to our last glass etching cream, and this one is the one that's really scary to me. Now this says easy etch. It says it's for glass right here. If you search for it, I got this at a hardware store. If you search for glass etching cream, this is what comes up. I did have to special order it through the website. This was not available in store. But if I take a look at the instructions for this one, like first of all, it comes with a sponge and it comes with all of these gloves, which is intimidating. It's very different from these other ones here. But these instructions, they only give me instructions for pouring this entire jar into a bathtub to remove the surface of the porcelain. So the instructions on this are really incomplete for all of the different uses that it claims here. So I'm going to read the instructions for how we would pour it into a tub, and then I'm just going to modify it for what we're doing here and see if we can come up with something that's safe and that will actually work. I mean, even the instructions, these instructions are terrible. These instructions are by far the worst of any of these. These things are very clear how to use it. This is extremely unclear. It's incomplete. And even if we were using this in a porcelain tub, this does not have all of the information we need to be able to use it. So, like, for example, let's check this out. So this is separated into two distinct colors. This is a lot thicker down here. It's a lot thinner up here. It doesn't say anything about shaking it, but even if you were going to use the entire bottle, like a bunch of this is going to sit at the bottom. So, I mean, I assume that we need to like shake this or stir this, but I mean, that's going to make it so sketchy when we open it. So, I mean, I'm going to shake it, but that might be wrong. So like, just know that you might not want to do what I do. Okay, so that seems a lot more even and consistent, but this is very, where it seemed thick, it's actually the whole thing is quite thin. So I don't even know how this would work in a tub unless you were using multiple jars. This product just seems bizarre to me. So, okay, let's be super careful. Let's go ahead and get those gloves on. And even with these gloves, like these gloves are short, any of these liquids, it's really easy for it to end up above the gloves. So even with gloves on, we want to be really careful about where this glass etching cream gets, like what happens. And actually, before I apply this one, we're probably to the point where we can stir our Armour Etch around to remove any air bubbles. And actually, our alarm just went off for this one as well. So we're moving this one around too. And that same alarm also tells us that we are finished with our very first glass. So before I get started with this last bad boy. I'm going to go ahead and wash this one off. This one is going to be shortly behind, so I'm going to take it to the sink with me to wash this one off as well. So I'm not doing that on camera, so let me just tell you what I'm about to do, which definitely gloves on. Otherwise, you could use a paper towel, but just make sure you don't actually touch it. As you put this underneath the water and wash it away, just make sure that that water and glass etching cream isn't going to splash on you as well. So as it washes off, it's going to get everywhere. It's not going to affect anything. As you wash it, it's not sitting on the surface of the glass long enough to etch anything. So all you have to do is just make sure you get it off thoroughly and completely. And that's basically the goal here. So I just washed off the glass etching cream from these two right here. I did this one first and then this one second. Now, I wish that I could show you that whole process on camera because there were some quirks to it, which this one, once the water hit it, it did seem a little bit thicker. So I actually spent a little bit more time washing this off than I did the folk art, which made me like this one a little bit better. But we won't know for sure until we see the results. I left the stencil on here so we could peel it back and really see that difference. But first, let's make sure to apply the glass etching cream on our last one. Move the glass etching cream around on this one if we haven't already, and then wash this off. So we are coming to the tail end. Now, this last one, again, we want to be super careful. I've got my gloves on. There's definitely a really good seal on this. So you really have to work for it to get in here. This exterior coating is like sticking to my gloves. So it is harder to get open, but immediately I noticed that this one doesn't have a child safety proof. It is quite sealed at the top, but that makes me really nervous for this product in general. It's so liquid and there's really nothing added to keep it safe. So I can say there's already a lot of things I don't like about this product. So we're just using a tiny amount. We're not pouring it in a bathtub. It's very different than how the instructions recommend using it. And so I'm basically just dabbing the tiniest amount on my popsicle stick. I want to make sure my gloves are free and clear. It doesn't even say how long to leave it on here. So we're just going to dab it and we shall see if this works. Now, dabbing it on is just fine. It's super liquid, but it's really easy to just work within the boundaries of the stencil. I would say that as far as the texture and consistency, I'm fine with it being super liquid. What I think is problematic is when it's thick and also kind of drippy at the same time. So just as far as the texture goes, I would say these two were a little bit more challenging. This one, the texture of it was really easy. The color made it easy. This one being super liquid is actually perfectly easy too. This one, the problem is that it's so thick that it's very hard to just get a thin layer. But once it's thick, you really worry about it dripping down. So setting my popsicle stick to the side, we always want to get our lid back on. We'll set this to the side. And now this one is, I don't know if I stirred this. I'll stir this one more time. That is the hazard of doing so many at once. I reread the instructions for this easy etch about 10 times. It says to leave it on for 20 minutes. Now I am going to do something slightly different with the easy etch than all of these other ones. Because this one is so liquidy, I'm going to reapply it at 10 minutes. I'm not just going to move around what's already there. I'm going to actually add a little bit more to it to make sure that there's enough, because it's a much thinner layer than any of these other ones, just based on the thickness of the material itself. This one is ready to be rinsed off, Only this one is remaining. So I'm going to go ahead and take this to the side, rinse it, and come back. This one is now washed and cleaned. So we've got 3 that are ready to go. This one is right at 10 minutes. That's its halfway point. So I'm going to add more of the Easy Etch to this. And just looking at it, I think this is going to work. When I left before, I was not feeling optimistic about this brand at all. But now that I can see it, I think it's already becoming frosty. I'm not even sure that we need to reapply it, but I want to use the same technique across all of them because it's the only way it's going to be fair. So I'm actually going to mix this gently one more time because it really does separate within just a few minutes. Very carefully open this up now that I've mixed it and set the lid to the side. And I'm just going to add the thinnest layer here just to make sure that we get that even coat and to make sure that there's not any air bubbles or anything that are going to alter the effects of the frost itself. So I just put the tiniest little bit on this popsicle stick, and actually the first time felt really comfortable, but this time, I mean, I feel like it's going to drip everywhere. So my technique is I'm scraping the excess off the popsicle stick into the jar, and I'm going to try to kind of scrape it from here too, but I'm really worried this is going to drip. And I mean, I didn't even add any extra at all. Like, I just barely dipped my popsicle stick in there. And that's it. And there we go. Okay, so I think that's a lot better. Popsicle stick is set to the side. Easy Etch has been re-added to our final glass. Lid goes back on for safety. And now all we need to do is wait those final 10 minutes for this to finish curing. We're going to wash it off in the same way that we washed all of these other ones, and then we'll do a reveal. Our last etched glass is now ready to be washed. This is the final one. So I'm going to take this to the side, wash it off. This one was on here for, again, 20 minutes. I just washed off the Easy Etch from this final glass. It washed off so easily. The fact that it was nice and thin just meant that it came right off. This was a really pleasant experience washing this. Now all of our glasses are ready for our big reveal. Everything's done. We are going to work from one side to the other, from the first one that we applied to the last one. So let's see what they look like. We're just peeling off the stencil so we can reveal the frosty shapes underneath. All right, this one looks amazing. This is the folk art. Now I can say that there's still just the tiniest little bit of etching cream on here. This one I rinsed so thoroughly, and I can still see that this needs to be washed again. So that's really interesting. I never would have known it, but it looks perfect. It's great. It worked amazingly. So love it. Folk art, way to go. It's perfect. Now let's try the Armour Etch. Well, this one looks perfect too. Same story. I feel like both of these could be washed again. Maybe once we have the stencil off, we might want to just give it another little rinse. Now, I always rinse it with the stencil on just because you can see where you applied the cream a little bit easier and it just makes it less messy. So maybe we'll rinse it again once we take the stencil off. This is hilarious. None of these are better or worse. They're all great. This one looks great. This one is perfect. This is the Etchall. It looks amazing. So I think it's really, at this point, I feel like the best way to pick the right etching cream is which one is the most affordable, which one is the easiest to find, which one do you just have access to. And at this point, I mean, this is literally the same end product. Let's check out this one though, because this is the one that made me nervous the whole time. This is the one that we really had to modify. So I'm going to pull this closer because that was a little bit challenging. Oh, what do you know? It looks great. Now this one, it was a little bit more liquidy And it does seem like maybe I might have gotten underneath that stencil slightly. I'm going to grab a paper towel and just see if I can wipe this down and maybe we can see it a little bit better. Yeah, you know what? This, because it's so liquidy, what it did is it leaked underneath the stencil slightly. And if you remember, like I put a lot of effort into putting all of these stencils down really thoroughly. So this one is a huge boo. This one is a big no. It's just too liquidy for this type of purpose. Now again, it says glass etching. It tells you that it's used for this purpose, but the instructions only gave me instructions for pouring this into a bathtub to remove a porcelain finish. So I think the biggest problem with this product is they need to relabel it really specifically what this is for. This is only for removing a porcelain finish off of a bathtub. This is not for this purpose at all. Let's review all of the different criteria we used to decide which ones we liked, which ones we didn't like, and we'll come up with the final winner of the best glass etching cream. So we already know that this one is out. It's just too liquidy for anything other than huge, large surfaces. So let's just put that away. We're not even going to consider that. It bled, the glass etching bled underneath the stencil. Again, probably because it's just so liquid. So this is only going to work for large surfaces, but not anything that's taped, stenciled, anything like that at all. So now we're down to the Folk Art, Armour Etch, and Etchall. This one was really easy to see when we applied it to the glass. That makes it so great to work with. I really enjoyed that quality. All of them rinsed off really well. These two, I think in particular, might as well be the same product, rinsed off exactly the same. The way that they finish is really great. All three of them are very, very similar in the way that they look. So we've got an advantage here. We've got an advantage here. There's one more criteria that really means a lot to me, which was for this one right here, the Etchall. The instructions were top notch. These had the best instructions. It also, even though I had to cut around all of that mess that kind of happened, this was the safest packaging. So that one makes me like Etchall as well. I thought this was really, really great. But price is going to be a factor as well. So let's just think about price on all of these different items. This one retails at about $4.97, $5.97. I had to pay for shipping to get this one, but I think that you could get this in person at a craft supply store. So that makes it really ideal. It's the exact same size as this one, which is actually going to retail for twice as much. When I see this out in the world or on a website, it usually retails for somewhere between like $10.99 and maybe like $14.99, depending on if shipping is paid for or not. But basically, like with shipping, we're probably going to walk away maybe like $14.97 or so. So this one is more expensive than this one. So if we're talking about that being a factor, Folk Art wins. This last one, Etchall, this one is double the size. And I also paid about double the price of this one. So these, I feel like might as well be the same product, except for the fact that the instructions were so much better here. So with that in mind, we're taking Armour Etch out of the equation. This one I would rank 3 out of 4. So now we're down to these two right here. And it's a really kind of a toss-up. I'm going to say that I think that this Folk Art is the best because of the way that it applies and because of the price point. But what would you decide? What do you think is your favorite? Which one are you going to try? Tell us in the comments and let us know what you think. And if you want to see more videos like this, make sure you like, subscribe, ring the bell. My name is Brittany Bly, and we are popshopamerica.com, where we are crafting happy every day.